On Tulsi Gabbard's foreign policy. So Tulsi Gabbard has a very developed foreign policy. She's been fighting. You know how hard it is to fight for peace? So with the Syrian war, she's opposed to the Syrian war, but because she's in the government, you want to execute the war as best as possible. So to always just be like, oh, peace, 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 I bet that really pisses the warmongers off. It pissed Obama off when Tulsi was against Syrian war, and now it's going to piss the Republicans off. So Tulsi Gabbard is a badass on a ton of things, a multitude of issues. Now, I just want to focus on foreign policy because she has a very well-developed foreign policy compared to Mayor Pete. Mayor Pete just says, in these endless wars, so his foreign policy is the same as Donald Trump's. Just tweet, in these endless wars, our president can't even stop the damn war. Who the fuck can stop this war? So Mayor Pete just says, in these endless wars, that's his entire foreign policy. And then Andrew Yang, he doesn't have any foreign policy whatsoever except for Israel upholds human rights. So I guess everybody should uphold human rights as well as Israel. That is a good moral litmus test. Are you a racist piece of crap? Do you think that, you know, are we all born equal? Do we all have the same political rights, or are some of us more important than others? So the people that have very little foreign policy statements, I worry about them. I worry about them because there's a lot of issues out there, and it's pretty. A lot of these things are pretty nuanced, so you have to know a good deal amount before you can even form an opinion. So I guess it's good for them to not speak when they don't know what they're talking about. But if they don't know what they're talking about, well, I don't want you in charge of the military. Foreign policy, you're going to be in charge of the world's premier, military. You're going to have all the nukes, and you're going to control the empire. So I want a peacenik at the helm of the empire with this warmongering that just goes on, and nobody can stop. Nobody can stop it. Not the Supreme Court, not the President, not the Congress. Nobody has the power to stop these things. Once it gets started, it just goes on and on. So if somebody says, let's invade Canada, as soon as that first bomb drops, we're going to be in a war with Canada and to the death, right? Forever, until one of us is wiped out. And so, Tulsi Gabbard. Okay, so Tulsi Gabbard on foreign policy. She's got a ton of good ideas. She wants to reinstate Glass-Steagall. She wants to get the middle class a tax cut. She has resisted, for democracy. She wants to make voter registration easier. She's for automatic voter registration. She's for paper ballots. She doesn't like requiring photo IDs to vote because it suppresses the vote. And a whole bunch of other. She wants statehood for the District of Columbia, and that's actually a popular idea for several of them. That's Mayor Pete and Mike Gravel. So D.C. and Puerto Rico might actually become a state under some of these Democratic candidates. So on foreign policy, since I said I'm just sticking with that, she doesn't want any war with Venezuela, whereas Bernie says that he's a bad dictator. She doesn't parse her words whatsoever. She's not doing a little bit of, column A and column B kind of stuff. She says no war with Venezuela. She's against war with Iran. And she says something like war with Iran would make the war with Iraq look like a picnic. And she wants to get the fuck out of Syria. So she's opposed to the war with Venezuela, opposed to the war with Iran, opposed to the war with Syria. My God, is this a good person? Have we actually found a good politician that's opposed to violence and murder and bloodshed? Murder is the worst crime out here. And yet you're going to sit there and say murder is fine? Jesus Christ. So many evil motherfucking people. Murder is the worst crime out here. It is not fine and dandy. Self-defense. But who are we defending ourselves from? Syria? You're worried about Syria invading us? You're worried about Venezuela? Venezuela might invade us now that we're meddling in their shit. That's a good way to create terrorists right there, right? Venezuela wasn't our enemy, attacked them, then terrorists start attacking us, and then American people be like, oh my God, I didn't do nothing, and now I'm being attacked. They are the bad guys, but it was our government that was in their country first. So you forget that. You forget that who starts the fight. Who starts the fight matters. Absolutely it matters. If Venezuela just dropped the bomb on us right now, that they started it, right? If they just dropped the bomb, that would initiate war, right? So if we do that to them, wouldn't it be a little disingenuous to not expect them to do it to us? So she wants to not cut the military budget, reduce the defense spending. So she's kind of on both. She's on both of those wavelengths. 2012, she wanted to reduce the defense spending, but March 2019, she wasn't in favor of cutting the military budget. She wants to fund the weapon systems and ABMs. She's for the war on terror, and she's for drone strikes, which, you know, in limited uses, I think it's okay. Even torture, like the torture, it's good to have a rule. Don't torture, except if you need to get information that, you know, the other person has, and it's a doomsday scenario and the whole world, you know, is on the verge of collapse. So, drone strikes, you know, drone strikes are good because you're not using, you know, American people for it, but they're robots, and so they could go astray. It was a drone strike, I think, that killed that 9-year-old American girl in Yemen as soon as Donald Trump got into office. And, okay, so yeah, so she's, what? She's against all these wars, right? Against Syrian war, against the Iran war, against the Venezuela war. These pro-lifers, they love this war, right? Pro-lifers love this war. She says she wants to end this new Cold War and nuclear arms race, which is a Venezuela thing, so we're starting a Cold War, nuclear arms. Her rhetoric on foreign policy is bar none the best. She talks about how Pompeo and all the rest of them are chicken hawks. Right, they're a bunch of chicken hawks when when the Saudi Arabia killed that Jamal guy, that Jamal Khashoggi. So Jamal Khashoggi was critical over Saudi Arabia. He's a journalist, and then when he goes into Saudi Arabia, he's murdered. He's straight up murdered, and Donald's like, well, that doesn't hurt our relationship, right? These pro-lifers, they love the murderers. When that happened, Tulsi Gabbard said that Donald Trump is Saudi Arabia's bitch. So she's going to stop the dealings with Saudi Arabia. She thinks it's actually a hub for where a lot of terrorism is coming out of. She's right. The 9/11 terrorists came out of Saudi Arabia. There's Wahhabism and Salafism. There's a lot of extremists. It's the homeland for the Muslims, so Mecca and Medina. So we're going to, you know, give these arms dealers, these 9/11, the people that supported, the state that supported 9/11 with finances, with money, and with people, we're going to give them, you know, billions of dollars in arms deal, not under Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi is not going to deal with Saudi Arabia. We're not going to be best friends with Saudi Arabia. We're not going to give them $1.15 billion worth of weapons. So we need to stop. This is her quoting. This is me quoting Tulsi Gabbard. The U.S. must stop arming Saudi Arabia, stop fueling this fire, and hold Saudi Arabia accountable for their actions. She wants to end the U.S. support for the Saudi-led intervention in Yemen. Yemen is a fucking genocide right now. There's a reason to go into Yemen to stop that genocide. Why don't we invade Yemen to stop the genocide? Oh, that's right, because we'd be attacking our good buddies, the Saudi Arabians. So we let the Yemeni people just get, you know, massacred and genocided just because what? Our buddy is evil as shit? And that should tell you everything, really. Their support, their love. The Republicans love Saudi Arabia. They love Saudi Arabia. They will give Saudi Arabia all the weapons, all the 9/11 terrorists. They don't care about fighting terrorism and Al-Qaeda. They don't give a shit. You know, Donald Trump's doing it, so it must be good. Let's just give Saudi Arabia, let's just give our country to Saudi Arabia. Fuck it, right? So she's way better on Trump when it comes to Saudi Arabia. She's saying that the U.S. is complicit in a humanitarian disaster in Yemen. We are. September 2018, she supported a legislation invoking the War Powers Resolution of 1973. Congress has the power to declare war, and then we have War Powers Resolution to make sure Congress retains that power, because in emergencies, the president can do what they want, but just in emergencies. You can't, you know, extend an emergency over 20 years. So she's right about Saudi Arabia. She's right about stopping the genocide in Yemen. She wants to stop arming terrorists. She put a Stop Arming Terrorist Act up to vote, and it didn't get passed. So apparently we're in a fight against Al-Qaeda and the terrorists. We're in a war on terror forever and ever, and yet the Stop Arming Terrorist Act has not been passed. And the reason why she had the Stop Arming Terrorist Act was to force the CIA to stop aiding militants in Syria. She wanted to ban federal funding for Al-Qaeda, Jabhat, Fatah al-Sham, and ISIL. She wants to ban federal funding for Al-Qaeda, Jabhat, and ISIL. Huh? We gotta cut the funding? We're funding Al-Qaeda and ISIL now? We need to cut the funding. Who the fuck would be opposed to Stop Arming the Terrorist Act? In fact, if you are giving weapons to Al-Qaeda, then that's treasonous. Al-Qaeda is our enemy, so you are giving comfort and aid to our enemy. That means you could be hung for treason. You're fighting against our country. You're going with the enemies and fighting against this country. And yet you had, what, 14 people, about 14 people co-sponsored it and it never got a vote? She says using the authority to use military force to go to war with Iran is illegal. She's staunchly against the war with Iran. She's in favor of the Iranian nuclear agreement. She's, doesn't want to finance Al-Qaeda or ISIL anymore in Syria. Let's not give all these weapons to Al-Qaeda. I mean, what the fuck are we doing? Jesus Christ, we're supporting Saudi Arabia, the homeland of Al-Qaeda, the ones who financed and provided the Al-Qaeda members. They were Saudi Arabian. And then now we have to sit there and beg people to not, get them to give money to the terrorists. Stop arming the terrorists. Pass that damn act. Stop arming the goddamn terrorists. What the fuck? She opposed the NATO-led military intervention in Libya. Look how moral she is. That's Obama and Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, she's a warmongering piece of shit, too. You want to go fight and just murder anybody? Hillary Clinton would get you into a war, Republicans. She didn't give a shit either. So she was the one that got us into Libya. But guess what? Tulsi Gabbard was against the Democrats going into Libya. She was against the Democrats, going into Syria. So she's opposed to the war. She's not a partisan when it comes to this issue. She's in favor of peace. She is one of the most pro-peace candidates, pro-peace Democrats that's running for president right now. She did not boycott Benjamin Netanyahu's address to the Congress. She says that Israel is our strongest ally. But then she also says, while I remain concerned about aspects of the U.S. resolution, I share the Obama administration's reservation about the harmful impact Israeli settlement activity has on the prospects of peace. So she's criticizing Israel, the Israeli settlements in Palestine, right? Israel's just going to go into Palestine, take their land. Who gives a shit? No one's going to stop them. America protects them. So they get away with murdering kids, stealing land. Who gives a shit, right? Murder, murder, murder. These are pro-life Republicans, man. God, they are so pro-life, aren't they? They love health care. They want to make sure everybody has health care. They want to make sure that nobody's going to die in poverty or in homelessness. They just love life so much, don't they? God, they love life. They love life. Man, life is just... She's going to allow transgendered back into the military, which is right. Yeah, I think with transgendered, I don't mind the cross-dressing. The surgery bothers me. If God made you, and I don't even believe in God, but if nature made you a man with lots of estrogen or a woman with lots of testosterone, that's who you are. You don't need to change your genitalia. I mean, nature said that you're going to have a lot of estrogen, and you're going to have, a dick. Or the opposite. You're going to have a lot of testosterone, and you're going to have a vagina. That's who you are. That's fine. I'm okay with who you are. And I'm okay even with the surgeries. I wouldn't want my kids to get surgically operated on. So, I think there's something going on. What the hell? You want to chop up your what and do what to what? But if they want to dress more feminine or dress more masculine, cross-dressing, I don't mind the cross-dressing. So that's just my personal feelings on that. When it comes to legislation, however, you can't discriminate against anybody. If people want to, wear, paint their face up in camouflage, have camouflage tattoos, I'm not going to discriminate against you because of, your piercings or your tattoos or your whatever. I might, wonder about this and that, and I might... have some judgments that I put upon you, but I'm not going to discriminate against you. I'm not going to say, hey, you cannot, you don't have a right to speak. You don't have a right to serve in the military. You don't have a right to go out to restaurants. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. You had a weird surgical operation that cut off your dick. You had a weird surgical operation that cut out your vagina and formed it into a penis. Okay, that's very weird. It creeps me out. But if I own a restaurant, I will serve you food. And so we shouldn't discriminate against people. So that's my feelings on the transgendered. I'm not, I'm in favor, I'm against discrimination. So, but personally, I wouldn't want my children, I would think there's a problem. There's a problem. My little girl who's got a lot of testosterone wants to do what? To cut the what? To do the what? No, there's something wrong there. No, that's, if I could stop it, right, I would not be in favor of something like that. So, she wants to get out of the war of Venezuela. No war with Venezuela, no war with Iran, no war with Syria, no war with Libya, no genocide in Yemen. Stop supporting Saudi Arabia, these damn terrorists, the hub of terrorism. Stop giving them weapons. Stop fueling the fire. Hold Saudi Arabia accountable for their actions. She also wants to end the 2 decades-long U.S. war in Afghanistan. She opposed the NATO-led intervention in Libya. She was against the 2003 invasion of the Iraq War. She fought in the Iraq War. So she was opposed. She fought in a war that she was opposed to. So, people want to mock Trump for saying that he, dodged the draft and now he's this big military guy. I want somebody who questions the military. I don't want some asshole that just says war is good for war's sake, murder is just good for murder's sake. I want somebody that says, here's a reason that we're going to attack somebody, and here are reasons why we would never attack. I want a clear war policy. And I'm going to write, actually, a war policy. I'm going to write my own war policy, and then we could compare and contrast. So I want, a person that says this war is bad, this war is good. If you can't even look at a war that's bad, then you're going to think invading Canada is a good idea. You're going to think invading Germany or some peaceful nation that hasn't done anything to us, let's just go invade them just because, just because. Who gives a damn, right? Oh, they don't have any weapons, let's invade them too. Let's invade everybody. You don't think the world's going to get a little pissed off about that? Isn't that Hitler's crime? He took over Austria, then he took over the Czech Republic, and then he took over Poland. It was the third country. That's when the world was like, all right, we got to stop this. She has argued that Democrats and others should not back away from the term Islamic extremist. She's right about that. She opposed the Obama administration's proposed military strikes in Syria and introduced legislation to block CIA activities in Syria and U.S. military action against Assad. That's Stop Arming the Terrorist Act. She stood up to the CIA. She might get murdered for this, standing up against the war machine. The fact that the war goes on, that just means the American people are the bitches to the military-industrial complex. They can't stop the wars. They have no decision. They're just the peasants. They're just the pawns, and yet the war continues. It just goes on and on and on. So she has done some interesting things. She's talked to a lot of these dictators, which I think diplomacy is a good idea. We shouldn't coddle dictators, and we should say something, maybe pass a resolution to say when they do wrong. So she talked with the Egyptian dictator, al-Sisi, which kind of bothered me. When she talked to Assad, that didn't bother me. So she says that Assad is a brutal dictator. And then there's a resolution in March 2016 that was essentially a war bill. This is what she said, a war bill thinly veiled attempt to use the rationale of humanitarianism as a justification for overthrowing the Syrian government. That's exactly what they do. That's how the Iraq War happened. It wasn't let's go to the Iraq War. It was let's pass the authorization to use military force. That's the bill that got us into the Iraq War, and that's the policy for today. The authority to use military force says that we are at war with the 9/11 terrorists, which included Al-Qaeda. And now the CIA is funding Al-Qaeda. They're giving money to Al-Qaeda, and nobody's going to stop the terror. Nobody's going to sign Stop the Terrorist Act. Stop arming the terrorists. That's the people that arm the terrorists should be put up for trial. That's treason. What the fuck are you doing? I'm not a warmonger. I don't care for terrorism as a tactic. I don't care for war as a tactic. And so, when it comes to the rules for the war, they're not even listening to their own rules. They're not even listening to their own rules. We got the authority to use military force against the terrorists, and yet we're going to give the terrorist weapons? Nobody thinks that that's a problem? Nobody's going to sign on to Stop Arming the Terrorist Act? So she met with Assad, but the Syrian war is just a regime change takeover. It's just a hedge. What do we need Syria for? Syria wasn't threatening us. What the fuck are we in Syria? Why are we there? When Donald Trump was first elected, she was one of the first people to actually talk to him, and she wanted to talk to him about Syria. And then she also says that the big Syrian refugee crisis has to do with the U.S. invasion. And she's right about all this stuff. So Tulsi Gabbard is just right about 90% to 95% of all, American foreign policy compared to somebody that's in there now that's essentially, I think he would try to get out of Syria, but he listened to, everybody else and we're still in Syria now. He tried to get out of Syria at Christmas time. And I was excited. The war is over. Oh, no, the war is still going on. Republicans and Democrats pushed him back into it. So Tulsi Gabbard called for a UN investigation into the attack and the prosecution of al-Assad. So she's got mixed feelings about Assad. She talked with Assad and she met with him, and people are saying, oh, she's giving comfort to the enemy. No, she's opening dialogue. And that's a good thing. It's what Trump is doing in North Korea. And that's a good thing. So Gabbard, let's see, she was mixed about Assad. So there was a chemical attack that everybody was saying was a chemical attack. She thought it was a chemical attack, but then it wasn't a chemical attack. And then she criticized, she said she questioned whether or not he actually did it. And then when Trump fired some missiles, she had criticized it, saying that it was reckless, and she was skeptical that he was even responsible for the attack. So there was no conclusion to an investigation. It was just assumed, and then there was an attack. So, and then Howard Dean, Mr. Anti-Iraq War, he criticized Tulsi for saying, about her criticism of the Syrian war. The Syrian war is bullshit. Fuck the Syrian war. Fuck the Afghanistan war. Fuck the Yemen war. Fuck the Iran war. Fuck the Venezuela war. Fuck the Cameroon war. Fuck the Niger war. Fuck the war in Nigeria. Fuck the war in, Libya and every other nation that we've invaded. What the fuck? I'm so sick and tired of spending trillions of dollars on these goddamn fucking wars. That's how the Roman Empire went down, overextension of their military. It's how the USSR went down, invading Afghanistan. What are we getting out of these trillion-dollar wars? Meanwhile, we got poverty on the streets and these pro-life Republicans, right? Let's murder a bunch of Afghanistan people, and who gives a shit about the poor people on our own streets? Yeah, they're so pro-life. They're Christian, too. And they love the poor so much, don't they? Bullshit. Bullshit. So she says that the U.S. has been waging a war in Syria since 2011, so she's, equal with her criticism. She says that central to that war to overthrow the Syrian government of Assad, along with our allies Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Qatar, has been providing direct and indirect support for terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda. And then later on, she said there's no disputing the fact that Assad has used chemical weapons and other weapons against his people. So she doesn't like Assad. She recognizes that he's done some bad things, but she also recognizes, like, what the hell are we doing in this country? What are we doing? What is our involvement in this nation? And, we should protect the Kurds and all this other, but the fact that people just say war, war, war without end, I want to hear the wars that you're opposed to. Were you against the Nazis? Are you in favor of the Nazi troops? What about the North Korean troops? Are you for, are you for the troops in Al-Qaeda? Support the troops no matter what, even Al-Qaeda troops, ISIS troops? Get out of here. She says Iraq was a war we should never have gotten into. She she opposes combat operations in Afghanistan, but she also says end our involvement. So when they say combat troops, that means they're just going to end part of the war, but the occupation is going to carry on. So she's a badass on so many things, right? She has got a very well-developed, she's in favor of the war on terror. She's in favor of drone strikes. So even though she's opposed to many of these conflicts and many of these wars, she's balanced. She's balanced. She says, all these wars here are wrong. Here's a war where I'm okay with. Whereas the Republicans are saying, we're okay with every single war that we've ever come across. Every war we've ever come across, we are okay with. We will murder and murder and murder until the day we die. And we're going to call ourselves pro-life because, fuck it, who cares? Nobody's paying attention anyways. So that's Tulsi Gabbard on American foreign policy. I think, with the drone strikes and the terrorism, I think we need to work on some of that, the torture. But I think emergencies, the terrorism as a tactic is horrendous. War as a tactic is horrendous too. So I believe the only war I believe in is revolutionary war, to fight the oppressors, like American revolutionaries fighting the British Empire, the Civil War, fighting against slavery, fighting to stop genocide, fighting to protect one country from being invaded by a sovereign nation like World War II, right? Germany had no right to go into Austria. Germany had no right to go into the Czech Republic. Germany had no right to go into Poland. And so that would be an okay war to defend Poland. It's okay to defend Ukraine. I was okay with defending Ukraine against, Russia. So there's, some wars that I'm okay with. So I'm balanced, right? I believe in self-defense. Sometimes you got to fight, right? But you don't have to fight all the time. Sometimes you can just live in peace. And peaceful people that ain't doing shit to you, you don't have to murder them, America. You don't have to murder them. And then on Israel-Palestine, she wasn't too developed on that. She did seem to love Israel a lot. And then she criticized Israel. So I'd like to know a little bit more about her Israel-Palestine views. But for everything that I just read now, she's 100% right. Everything I just said, she's 100% right. So Tulsi Gabbard, Bernie Sanders can learn from Tulsi Gabbard. And Bernie Sanders can learn from Mike Gravel, too. Mike Gravel's got a really good foreign policy. And Mayor Pete, you don't have a foreign policy. And Andrew Yang, you don't have a foreign policy. So Mayor Pete and Andrew Yang, why don't you, take some notes from Tulsi Gabbard. She's leading this conversation in the Democratic Party, even superseding typically the peacenik Bernie Sanders. So Tulsi and Mike Gravel are better than Bernie Sanders on foreign policy. Not much. He's great on foreign policy, but they're a little bit better. So, that's Tulsi Gabbard on American foreign policy. Peace!